Well, welcome to this evening's webinar, Surge Ahead with Artificial Intelligence, 5 Strategies for Business Success. Our presenter is Margaret Eastwood. Margaret is a certified SCORE mentor with the North Cook and Lake Counties chapter of SCORE, and she is our presenter. My name is John Fisher, and I'm one of over 70 mentors with our chapter, and I'll be serving as today's moderator. So as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel in a few days. You can get to our YouTube channel by going to our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. While the presentation is going on, please submit your questions using the Q&A function at any time, and we welcome all the questions. They'll all be answered at the end of the session here. So let's go over what SCORE is. SCORE is a organization that's been around since 1964. We provide free confidential mentoring for small businesses. And our website has an incredible large library of resources for people who want to start a new business or grow an existing business. To request a mentor, please go to our website, and you've got a couple of links here. Let's see, we go to the next slide. Okay, so our presenter this evening, as I said, is Margaret Eastwood, a certified SCORE mentor. Margaret uses her expertise in artificial intelligence, conversion rate optimization, and search engine optimization to help SCORE's clients move their businesses forward. She held top executive positions in several large corporations, and she also co-founded 2 startup companies. Margaret retired as vice president in Johnson & Johnson's medical devices business, and she holds a PhD in computer science. So Margaret, please begin your presentation, and we'll come back at the end for questions.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The Harvard Business Review made a prediction that AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. Only time will tell whether or not their prediction is correct, but I'm going to make my own prediction, and that is businesses with AI will outcompete businesses without AI. And I feel very confident in making my prediction because AI is extremely powerful. It is astonishingly fast. It can do things in minutes that used to take hours. It's like having a virtual staff that's very, very smart, because there's so much expertise and knowledge embedded in the various AI systems. It can also save you money if you decide to do in-house things that you used to outsource. The term artificial intelligence actually includes an entire ocean full of technologies. 20 years ago, it meant that a computer could beat a human at playing chess. But since that time, the technology has evolved such that we now have robots, image recognition, Siri and Alexa, autonomous vehicles, and ChatGPT. During my presentation today, I'm going to focus only on this most recent wave, which is generative AI based on a large language model. Large language model really refers to the fact that it's really good with words. Generative means that it comes up with a new answer, something that hasn't been seen in that form before. There are a number of branches of generative AI. It can even generate computer code. I'm not going to talk about that today, but I will be talking about the others. There are more than 1,000, in fact, there are many more than 1,000 AI programs today, but it all started back in November of 2022 when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT. You see that down at the bottom of my chart here. ChatGPT was an instant, phenomenal success. It was the fastest growing software ever, and everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon. So immediately you saw Microsoft jump in with Bing, Google jumped in with Bard, Dolly and Midjourney are image generation packages, just a huge rush to get onto the AI bandwagon. Since that time, there have been a lot of other companies that have joined this foundation level. All of the packages have vastly improved their capabilities. Some have changed their names, but that's where it all got started. And it spawned this center section that I have on the chart. At one time, there were over 1,000 companies who had little portions of programs that would work with ChatGPT, giving it a lot of extra capabilities. And also in that category, I put a lot of independent companies that have nothing to do with OpenAI and all of their offerings, which might be general purpose or very specific. About the spring of 2023, we started seeing the top level that I have here. And that was well-known established software companies such as LinkedIn, Zoom, Constant Contact, QuickBooks, companies of that caliber who started incorporating AI into their standard packages. Now, if your standard package that you love doesn't yet have AI, don't worry about it. It's coming soon. Literally every day, there are new introductions, new capabilities, new companies entering the field. So I'm sure you'll be seeing it in your favorite software. With so many choices, how in the world are you ever going to know or find what you really want? If it is associated with ChatGPT, it's the market leader. That's why you hear its name so often. You can look on OpenAI's website and look at their GPT store. But there are several websites, some of which I've listed here, who try to keep track of all of the different AI packages. And they all have filters up, like you see there at the top, so you can help identify what's exactly right for you. These are all wonderful tools for you to apply to your business, but you have to remember, they're also available to your competitors. So if you want to surge ahead with your company or even keep up with the crowd, you need to learn how to get the most value out of your AI activities. And that's what we're going to try to help you with today. This is the arrangement that we have for the webinar. I'm going to go through this sequence 5 times, once for each of the 5 strategies. The strategies are very effective, but they're also extremely practical and realistic. You could start implementing any of them or all of them tomorrow. Then for each one, we're going to have a list of AI use cases. It's not an all-inclusive list, but it's just to get you started thinking about it. What's really available out there? What can it really do for you? These use cases are ones that I selected do not require any special capability. Any of the major AI packages will be able to do these use cases. You don't have to pick a particular one. Out of the list, I will select one to use as an example to illustrate it. Most of my examples I did do with ChatGPT, but some of them I did not, and it won't matter. Any of them you can do. Unfortunately, I will also have to share some concerns and cautions. AI is still quite new and has growing pains. There are some things that you can discover that are not positive at all, and I need to alert you to them so that you will be ready if and when you fall into that pitfall. Before we start in on that sequence, let's talk first about prompts. A prompt is how we tell AI what we want it to do. It's a two-way conversation with the AI, and it will remember what you've been talking about. Now, this is a really positive attribute that we're going to take advantage of, as you'll see throughout the presentation. It remembers what you're saying. And the reason we care so much about prompts is that the better the prompt, the better will be the answer. For example, if you just give it a really generic request, you'll get a really generic answer. It'll have a lot of words, but not much substance. You'll become very frustrated and you'll say, what's this with AI? I'm not getting anything particularly useful. If that happens to you, it probably means your prompt isn't specific enough. And if you change the prompt, you should get a better answer. But the real question here is, what is the definition of a good prompt? The best way to find out is to ask. So here's my first prompt. Now, because I have so much material to go through during this presentation, I'm not a fast enough typist to do all these live for you. So I did do them in advance, but all the prompts I'm showing here are verbatim of what I typed in the computer, bad grammar and misspelling and all. Then all the results are screenshots of whatever I got. I did not edit either the input or the output, so this is what you would see. So here's our first prompt. To get the best GPT results, I need good prompts. List 7 attributes of a good GPT prompt. List them as bullet points. Follow each one with a one-line prompt that might be used by a small business that is an example of that attribute. 2 seconds later, here it is. This is its answer, gave me what I wanted, 7 items. And this is actually a very good list. I would encourage you to take a picture of it or write it down so you can refer to it later. is one of the better lists that I've seen. Clarity means that your prompt is very clear and unambiguous. Specificity is what exactly do you want AI to do for you? Context is what are we talking about? What's the general environment? Structure means what format do you want it in? Do you want bullet points or something else? Engagement is the tone of voice. Do you want it businesslike? Do you want it humorous? Maybe you want it sympathetic? You can tell it. Relevance is what is it related to, sort of like context. And conciseness is how long or short do you want the answer. I added the 8th item here myself, which is exclusions. Sometimes it's very helpful to tell the AI what you don't want as well as what you do. So that's our first output on what is a good prompt. Let's look at the prompt that I used and rate it and see if it's actually a good one. To get the best GPT results, I need good prompts is the context. That's what we're talking about. Specificity is what exactly do I want it to do? List 7 attributes of a good prompt. List them as bullet points and follow with a one-line prompt is the structure. That's the format I wanted. And relevance is I want it to be used by a small business. So this prompt is a good one. It does incorporate 4 of the things. And I would say it's also clear. So we've really got 5 of them. You'll rarely have all 7, but you should have more than one and you'll have a good prompt. So let's move on to our first strategy. Apply AI across your entire business, not just to marketing. Now, marketing has gotten a huge amount of press when you talk about AI, and with good reason, because there are many, many possibilities for using AI well with your marketing activities. But if AI is as great as some people think it is, then why wouldn't you want to use it across your entire business? So I have here a generic organization chart, and it has all the standard functions that you will recognize. And I'm going to use this to represent your company. And you say, wait, no, I have a little tiny company. I don't have all that stuff. Well, actually, you do. You may not have people dedicated to each of these topics, but you have tasks in each of these areas. And if you don't have staff, that means that you're doing the work of all of them. So no wonder you may be stressed out or don't have enough time to get to all the things that you wish you were doing for your business. All the more reason why you need AI to help you. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the left-hand side of this organization chart with finance. And we're going to work our way across the organization chart, looking for opportunities to put AI in action. So let's start with the first one over there, finance. Here is a list of potential use cases. This is not exhaustive. This is just what would fit on a slide, basically. But let's go through some of these. The first one is very useful to add your finance knowledge. It's quite common for entrepreneurs to know a lot about their own product or service, but have never had the opportunity for formal finance training. And so you may be a great physical therapist, but you didn't really follow along very well when your bookkeeping service went on and on about cash accounting versus accrual accounting. So all you do is type into your AI, give me some examples specific to my physical therapy business, and you'll get a very useful answer. So don't forget that that is available to you. But there are other things we can do. We can do finance planning and get some estimated costs. What about payment reminder emails? If you're looking for money, it might have some good ideas or help you write that grant application. You might want thank you letters to donors or update your investors. And if you haven't completed your business plan yet, first of all, I would recommend you go to the SCORE website. It has outstanding templates and information there on business plans, but you still have to write the sections. And maybe AI can help you with that or help you with your elevator speech. Now, out of this list, the one I have selected to do as an example is finance planning. So here is my prompt. I want to open a bakery shop that sells 10 kinds of pastries. It is for takeout only. What will be my primary categories of expenses? And what are the main expense items in each category? Include both one-time and ongoing expenses. Boom, 3 seconds later. Exactly what I asked for. On the left, you see the different categories, one-time expenses and ongoing ones. And on the right, you can see where it gave me some examples of each one. This can be really helpful as you're considering your budget because there might be things here that didn't actually occur to you and that would give you a good chance to plan ahead and be sure that you're on solid ground. Unfortunately, the AI waters can be treacherous. Something can come up and bite you. And the primary one is AI makes mistakes. Sometimes it's incomplete. Sometimes their answer is wrong. And even worse, sometimes it's imaginary. It makes up stuff. They're called hallucinations. It may sound extremely plausible, but it isn't real. You really have to watch for these. The other big issue is that the training data that was used to make these models, we know to be biased, and therefore your answer can be biased. Because the packages are much better, but they're still not foolproof, you should really do a lot of manual fact checking on really important items. Packages will say, oh, we can check for you. None of them really work 100% yet. So please be careful on how accurate are your answers that you're getting. Excuse me. The second strategy, make AI as convenient as your cell phone. If you're like most of us, you use your cell phone every single day and can consider it an indispensable business tool. What would it take for you to use AI every day and consider it an indispensable business tool? I've done a quick comparison here for you. Both of them are extremely versatile. They can do many, many things. They're both user-friendly, but where you see the biggest difference is how organized they are with dealing with data. Think of your cell phone. You have contact list, you have thousands of photos, you have your playlist. You can easily add or delete items and find what you need. That's not true with AI. It's still too new and doesn't have good data capability. That's a void we want to fix. Here's our list. We're moving across our work chart. We're going to talk now about legal. You're likely to run across a lot of different kinds of contracts. And AI can do two things for you. One, it can help you write contracts, but also if you receive one, it can review it for you and give you a heads up if it sees any red flags. You have other items that are sort of legal or quasi-legal, your cancellation policies, non-disclosure agreements, IP, lots of T's and C's, privacy statements. And if you're just starting out, it can help you with licensing requirements to know what's out there, and including things like parking requirements or signage. So there are quite a few things on the legal part of your business. The one I've selected today to use as our example is to write a customer contract. Here's my prompt. My company sprays people's yards for mosquitoes. They can select either a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. They can pay by the month or for the entire season. I need a contract for the customer to sign that shows which options he has selected and he agrees to pay the specified rate. Write a customer contract for me to use. Presto, 3 seconds later, here we have it. Beautifully formatted. I really like the format. Although I did laugh when I saw all the T's and C's that put in there, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Let me blow this up so you can actually read it. I did not tell the AI what format I wanted. ChatGPT came up with this all by itself, but you can see what a nice format it is with these little squares. My customer can just check off which options they want and agree to pay whatever I've written in there. So I thought it did a really nice job on our customer contract. Unfortunately, there's again a concern. I already warned you, AI makes mistakes, and you don't want those mistakes to show up in your legal documents. So before you're all done, please consult a real lawyer to make sure that you're on solid ground. I pointed out that there's a problem with dealing with a lot of data, a lot of things that you're doing with AI. If you're using it every single day, you will have generated a lot of prompts, and it's hard to find them again when you go back through your AI history. I have searched for a commercial prompt library and have not found one that meets my needs, so I invented my own. Now you can invent your own, of course, but I'm going to tell you about mine. It's very easy and it's very low tech. All I do is copy the prompt out of my AI and paste it into a spreadsheet. Now, a spreadsheet works better than a document because later I'm going to want to sort it, and I have unlimited expansion on all the columns off to the right for whatever I might want to put in. I just number them sequentially, starting from P1 and just keep going as I paste them into my spreadsheet. So I would encourage you to do the same thing so you can find them when you need them. We'll talk about this more as we move on. Let's talk about our third strategy. Use prompt chains for speed, quality, and efficiency. This is where the gold is really buried in AI. It makes a good system even better. It gets the job done even faster, while at the same time, it increases the quality of the result, as counterintuitive as that may sound. Let me tell you about what is a prompt chain. A prompt chain is a series of prompts that execute in a particular order. Each one does part of the job and passes on its results for use by prompts further down the line. So what we're talking about is taking advantage of the fact that the prompts remember what's gone on before so that it can use the results for later and get better quality. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate next. But first, of course, we have to look at our use cases. And we're up to the human resources box on our organization chart. The most obvious, of course, is job descriptions. But it's not just a job description. We want to know where can we find such a person? How much is it likely to cost us? We'll have things like offer letters and benefit descriptions. If you have any remote people, you might especially want onboarding materials so they know all about your company. And if you have even one employee, I strongly recommend that you have a written policy manual. You want that stuff in writing. If things are going well, you might have team building ideas or non-monetary awards. If things aren't going so well, then maybe getting advice on what to do about it would be a good idea. Out of this list, the one I'm going to use as an example is job description. Here's my prompt. I hope you realize these are just straightforward. This is not rocket science. You just tell it what you want it to do. I want to hire a contractor to do social media postings for my small company. Duties will be to prepare the content and post on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram every week. The contractor will also respond to any comments. The work can be done remotely. It is expected that the contractor will work 3 hours every day. Write a job description for this position. Presto. Once again, very interesting, nice format. I read it through. It is accurate, quite thorough. I liked it a lot. And you say, wow, 3 minutes flat and I'm all done. Well, if you've ever actually tried to hire someone, you know that it takes a lot more than just a job description to do so. So what we're going to do is use this as the first prompt in a prompt chain, and we'll try to get the whole job done quickly and easily. So if we've decided that we're going to hire someone, we have to advertise that job. And we do that, let's say we're going to use Indeed as the job posting place, but we need a job posting, not a job description. So the first, or the second rather, prompt in our prompt chain is what's the difference between a job description and job posting? And the answer is the job posting has to sell the job. It has to convince an applicant or a candidate rather to even apply for the job. Okay, that sounds good, but how much is this person likely to cost me? And the answer is, well, it depends on their level of experience, but here are some ballpark numbers. And then you say, wow, that's going to cost more than I had hoped. I'm not sure I can attract someone with just money. Are there any non-monetary things that would help inspire them to apply for my job? And so we ask it, what would motivate someone to apply? And so the answer is, people will be looking for flexibility. They want to have creative expression and opportunities for professional development. You say, oh, okay, we can do that. But I do want to make sure I'm going to get my money's worth. What attributes should my candidate have? And the answer is, your candidate should be creative. That's kind of a given. But it also says this person should be adaptable. Well, that came as a surprise to me when I saw this answer. That had not occurred to me that it should be adaptable, but AI explained to me why adaptability is something that I should be looking for. Okay, so now let's try some interview questions. Now, this is another area where you can see where the one prompt gave its answer to the next one, because we just said I should be looking for creativity and adaptability. And the first two interview questions are exactly about that. Tell me about your creativity and tell me about your adaptability. Again, there was a surprise. It's suggesting that my third interview question ought to be about their analytical skills. Now, where in the world did that come from? It turns out it came from the job description several prompts ago in our prompt chain, because it said that the candidate or the winner ought to be able to monitor how well his or her posts are doing, which takes analytical skills. I had forgotten that, but AI did not forget. It put it into the interview questions. So now I think I'm ready to have it write the job posting. Again, just a few seconds later, and here we have our job posting. Again, lovely format, quite thorough. And again, I did not tell it what should be in the format. And let me blow it up so you can see. This is supposed to inspire people to apply for our job. So AI put in a section called Why Join Us? And you can see the things that it chose to say are from our third prompt. Remember when we asked what would motivate this person besides money? And that's what it put in this section. It says you can have flexibility, you can have creativity, and there's an opportunity for growth. So now we don't have a generic job posting. We have something very specific to this kind of position. If next month we were going to hire a project manager or a finance person and ask the same prompt chain, we would get different answers. We probably would not be looking for creativity in our finance person, although you never know. But this is how you get much higher quality. It's very specific to what we're trying to do. I look at this and I say, oh yeah, it's really nice. However, it might be just a little dry for social media where you usually have a lot of energy. So I thought I would ask it to rewrite the job posting. So here's my prompt that we want to have it rewritten in a zippier, breezier style. We want to emphasize how fun it is working for our company. And boy, did it ever. It changed every single sentence in this job posting. So here we now have, there, now you can read it, all blown up. That section that said, why join us? It now says, why us, you ask? Freedom, set your rhythm. We love flexibility. Creativity unleashed. We're all ears for your groundbreaking ideas. Joyful journeys. Celebrate the heartwarming tales of satisfied customers that roll in, thanks to your magic touch. Apply now, wave goodbye to the mundane and step into a world where work is play and every day is a creative gala. How could you possibly resist applying to work at this company? It even changed the name of the job. We now are looking for a social media maestro, someone who has a passion for pixels and likes to work in their pajamas. Now, I admit, I may have overdone it on this prompt. It sort of went overboard in the enthusiasm category, but it certainly illustrates to you how AI can rewrite anything that you have, and you can try different tones of voices. You might want to try one that's a happy medium here. We just generated a lot of new prompts. This my hypothetical company here had already been up to prompt number 18. So we started with prompt number 19 and we copy all those prompts we just did into our prompt library, one right after the other. But that's not really sufficient anymore. What we really want to capture is the fact that they were part of a prompt chain, and also in what sequence should they be executed. This is still part of the same spreadsheet. And I again number them just sequentially. So here's chain number 1, and you can see that each of the prompts is listed there in different column. So in the future, I will remember in what sequence they should be executed. If you look at my hypothetical company that's been taking advantage of AI and doing a lot of different prompt chains, here's what it might look like. In fact, you'll find that marketing has a lot of long prompt chains, so that happens a lot. A given prompt can be in multiple prompt chains. The prompts don't have to be in numerical order, especially if you're doing edits. For example, in our job hiring prompt chain that I use as an example, I forgot to write an offer letter. And so I might want to insert that in here somewhere for when I use it again in the future. So you say, okay, I understand what you're doing here. but why in the world do you have prompt chain number 4? This just has one prompt in it. It's not even a chain. The reason I did that is for the column called frequency. So let's pretend it's near the end of the month. So I take my prompt chain library and I sort it on the column called frequency, and it puts all the items that need to be done at the end of the month together. Now I have my to-do list. I can just sit there, block through the various prompt chains that are all done at the end of the month. By lunchtime, I've got it all done. It's very easy. And you say, oh, but isn't that an awful lot of copying and pasting? You have to copy it out of AI, paste it into the spreadsheet, then copy it out of the spreadsheet, paste it back into AI later. And the answer is no, you don't have to do that. There's a much better way, which I will show you now. You can run AI on your phone. So download it onto your phone. So then when it is the end of the month, find a comfortable chair, get a cup of coffee, and you can speak the prompts of the chain into your AI. You don't have to copy and paste anything. You'll be able to see it running on your screen in case you have to make a choice or enter some parameters or something, but you can just speak all the different chains that have to be done at the end of the month. By the time you're done your cup of coffee, the AI has done all the work and it will sync it with your computer and you're all done. It's actually quite a slick way to do it. There's always another concern. When you talk about HR especially, but also finance and legal, please do not put personal or confidential information right into the AI system. They will tell you that they now have much tighter privacy limits, but none of them have been 100%. They say that they won't use it in the training. There have been a lot of bad examples where it did get into training by mistake. So please don't do that. Again, since this is HR, you want to be very much on the alert for bias in the answers. We're now moving across our organization chart and we're ready to talk about sales. My goodness, that's a very crucial function for your company. And if there's any place you want help, this is the place. Here's our list. Let's start with our sales pitch. And that's really important whether you're doing it live or if you're doing it online. And in addition, we need answers to common objections or common questions that customers are going to ask you. AI can help you in several ways. First of all, it can help you draft your sales pitch, but you can also do role play with it. If you're going to be doing live sales pitches, you can speak it into your phone and AI will critique your delivery. You can also ask AI to act as a prospective customer and ask you questions, and you can practice giving your answers. So it's quite a strong tool for practicing your sales pitch. Attribute of good salespeople is they will make the customers feel loved. They give them a lot of attention. They're very responsive with variety of questions. They keep them updated. And you can now afford to do that using AI to help by helping with the instant proposals, follow-up emails, customer satisfaction, make sure they really like it. So at the end, you can ask them for a 5-star review. Depending on the type of business you have, you may have other customer service needs. You might need user manuals, assembly, troubleshooting things, instructions, things like that. Out of this list, the one we're going to pick as an example is to prospect for leads. Here's my prompt. I want to sell specialty water bottles to gyms. Give me a list of gyms within 25 miles of Columbus, Ohio. Sort them by the size of the business. List them with the largest one first. Include the gym's name and address. Again, within seconds. Here's a list of the gyms. I don't happen to live in Columbus, Ohio, but I'm going to assume that that really is in sequence by size. And it's a very clear and easy use for me to go around and visit all these gyms with my sales pitch, which I just wrote. Now you might notice it says Google Maps up there in the corner. That's because this one, rather than use ChatGPT, I thought it was a perfect excuse to use Google's offering. And I did that. You notice the prompt looked exactly the same. There was nothing special about the prompt in either case, and it worked just fine. Let's go to our fourth strategy. Use AI to personalize your marketing. This is a very, very powerful one that you want to implement for sure. But before we talk about that, let's look at our last function on our organization chart, and that is marketing. The thing that gets the most attention is using AI to write your social media posts. I hope you recognize this as a really long prompt chain. Here's our scenario. You post twice a week, but you've run out of ideas. So you start a prompt chain and you say, give me 5 ideas of things that I might write about this week. And it gives you some and you pick 2. You say, okay, for these 2, write me some content for my posts. It does. And then you say, okay, give me some ideas for captions, hashtags, emojis. It does that. But you still need images. So we continue with our prompt chain and you say, okay, I have 2 posts here. Give me some 3 ideas for images for each one. So it gives you a bunch of image ideas. You pick some and then you say, okay, generate the images. So now you've got this really long prompt chain. Please remember to put it in your prompt chain library. You will have similar prompt chains for all of your digital marketing channels. You'll have it for probably your website, your emails, newsletters. It can even write paid ads for you. In addition to things like that, what about podcasts? They're very popular right now. It can draft the script. It can translate it into a lot of languages. You can even get an AI voice that can speak it properly in each of those languages, and you're good to go. Have you ever considered writing an ebook? Now might be the time. In marketing, you've got the whole area of what is my market really like? What about the buyer personas, what's trending, a competitor analysis? There's a lot of opportunity in those areas. Don't forget to entertain them and keep them engaged with quizzes or games. And it will even give you ideas for new products or services, or pick a name for your company. You are probably already repurposing your marketing content. Let's say you're introducing a new product or you're going to have a big sale next week. You'll have your base content and you're probably putting it everywhere, on your newsletter, on your website, on Facebook, which is great. You're supposed to do that. That's a good thing. But we want to take it one step further. We want to have personalized marketing. What the difference is that different customer segments get slightly different versions of the content modified to specifically appeal to them. I'm sure you've received a lot of these things where it says, oh, you usually read mysteries, here's another mystery. There's a lot of marketing that you probably get every day. The reason you get this is because it has a much higher conversion rate. Exactly how much higher depends on your industry and your product, and also which set of statistics you believe. But this is something that you really want to do. The reason people don't, it's a lot more work. The things in yellow are the things you're doing to repurpose content, but it's sort of one size fits all. To be personalized, the first thing we have to do is make sure we know what are our customer segments. All businesses know pretty much who their target market is. It's people who own dogs or people who like to cook, but they may not know the customer segments within that target market. And we can use AI to help define that by making our customer personas. After we do that, then we can use AI to do all the work of modifying our base content to match each of those segments that we just found. So let's do that. Here's our prompt. I make unique handcrafted women's jewelry. Here are the metals that I use. Here's my general price range. Write some customer personas that would describe my customers. 3 seconds later, here we have our answer. The first thing to notice is that AI knew what a persona was. I didn't tell it. It's a hypothetical person who represents a customer segment. And it gave us 3 of them. First, we have Aria, who's between 30 and 40 and is artistic. We have Bella, who's a little bit younger, and she's an environmentalist. And we have Catherine, who's a little bit older, and she's an elegant professional. Not only did AI know what a persona is, it guessed how we were going to be using it. And so it gave us the information that we need to help modify our content to appeal to them. It lists their interests. Catherine likes fine dining. Aria likes art galleries. It also gives our shopping motivation. We can use all of that as we target our content. But the one thing it didn't tell us is what social media platform are they likely to be looking at. So we could ask it, what social media are they most likely to see my posts? And the answer are, for Aria, we're going to try Instagram, Bella, Facebook, and Catherine, LinkedIn. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and modify our content. In the interest of time, I didn't do that, but I think you can understand how we will just continue with our prompt chain to put in these next steps. And we'll have 3 different versions of our base content, taking advantage of the information that has been passed along our prompt chain from our personas. But this being social media, we obviously need images. So let's work on those. Here's our prompt. Create an image of Catherine. She is sitting in an elegant restaurant. Remember, her interest was fine dining, holding a glass of wine. The candlelight glints off the rim of her wine glass and off her gold earrings. We sell gold earrings. We sell earrings, so make them prominent and no competing jewels. Now, this prompt looks just like all the other prompts I've been showing you. There was nothing special for image generation. There are some excellent image generation packages, but if you're just getting started, I would recommend you use whatever is already integrated with your main AI. It's so easy. You don't have to copy things from this package to that package. The prompts are exactly the same, and it can easily be included in a prompt chain. So that's what I've done. Dolly happens to be the image generator that goes along with ChatGPT, but there are other ones that you can also use that go with other packages or are independent. So let's see what we got as our image. Here, I think the first one is just lovely. The second one, oh dear. The second one is because AI did not know what format we wanted. We didn't tell it in our prompt what format we wanted. The third one is very strange. What in the world is that candle doing in the middle of the wine glass? The fourth one is just a picture. That was so quick to do that let's do another one. Let's talk about Bella. Here, I did not have as elaborate a prompt. I just said, put her in a farmer's market. AI obviously knew what a farmer's market looked like. And there she is. I think, again, the first one is very nice. The third one is, again, a different style to let us know whether we want a different style. And the fourth one is very strange. What in the world are those collarbones doing? You know, if you were really paying attention to the detail, AI was. Did you notice that Catherine was dressed in an elaborate suit, whereas here she's in a what looks like a 100% wool sweater, organic, no doubt, and then a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. It's a Save the World design. So that's the kind of detail that will surprise you when you find it in AI. Contrary to all those good things I'm saying, look at number 2. That one is absolutely a disaster. And that's what happens with generated images. Sometimes you get really strange things, a pure shipwreck, and you just have to ask it to do it again. Another problem that you can encounter is that some types of editing need to be done elsewhere. For example, it doesn't like you to do just little tiny edits. It doesn't want to do that. It wants to start over. So that might be something you would need to deal with. In the general area of AI generated images, I'm sure you've seen it in the news. There are just so many issues around it. Who really owns what can be used for training, inappropriate subjects, and the threat for better and better deep fakes that are so hard to discern at this time. Many people are working on that, but they have a long way to go. We're now ready for our 5th strategy. Make your company stand out in the crowd. And there will be a crowd. Remember that everybody has access to these tools, and they could be generating boatloads of content and just flooding all the digital marketing channels. How are you ever going to stand out in all of that? This is a big enough topic that it deserves a webinar all of its own. I'm sure there are some out there. We have touched already on several topics which help with you standing out. One of the main ones is personalizing your marketing, but also things like very eye-catching images and well-written content that has following trending hashtags, things like that. But there's another aspect that I want to point out here, and that is strengthening your brand image. AI is very good at this. Here are ones that you will recognize from different companies. What about shape, color, font, and character? Now, Kellogg's has been putting Snap, Crackle, and Pop on their Rice Krispie boxes for 75 years, so it must be working for them. But you might want to pick one of these to strengthen your brand image. So let's try shape. Here's my prompt. McDonald's has its arches. Nike has its swoosh. They are eye-catching but clean and simple. I would like a signature shape for my landscape company. Can you give me 3 suggestions for a design? Notice I'm asking for an image, but the prompt looks just like any other prompt. Here's its answer. So I have my options 1, 2, and 3. If I lived in Colorado, I would pick number 2, but I don't. So I'm going to pick number 1, and I will have a swoosh of my own. Here's where I ran into trouble with editing, though, because I wanted it in green instead of in black. Dolly did not want to do that. I had to move it into a different package where I could change the color. But we're not limited to just that when we talk about our brand image. I want to emphasize at this time, in fact, I want to close with this, how AI gives you the opportunity to raise the bar on the quality across your entire operation. Have you ever had an occasion where you produce something? It might have been something on your website, it could have been your advertising or your newsletter, and you knew it wasn't great, but you just didn't have the time or the money or both to really make it better, to do it again. You just didn't have the time. With AI, you have plenty of time. It can do it in just minutes or seconds, and it costs almost nothing for you to do it again at a much higher level. Let's take this example. Here is Lion Rug Cleaners. They're brand new. They haven't even created their brand image yet, and they're trying to decide what they want. And they have 2 choices that they've thought of so far. One is to have it big and strong because we can take the toughest stain out of your carpet. So that's the one on the left. Or maybe they want a different mood. They want to be household friendly with a smiling lion. Or maybe they don't like either of these, but they can generate in 5 or 10 minutes lots and lots of different options till they get one that they really like. And then at that time, they can pass it on to the commercial graphic designer to make their advertisements or whatever it is they need. So this is true across your entire operation. You can have much more complete financial planning. You can take the time to do a prompt chain and get higher quality candidates for your job hiring. You can redo your marketing materials in a much stronger way. So you're not limited. You can raise the bar on your company. So take the opportunity and start now. You've now seen the 5 strategies. You've seen over 60 use cases and several enablers, including the prompt chain library and using your phone in conjunction with your AI on your computer. I hope this is enough to convince you that AI is a serious business tool. It's not a toy, it's not a fad, it's not going away, I can assure you of that. And that it will inspire you to incorporate it into your business operations to get all these benefits that we've been talking about. Some of you, I'm sure, have already tried AI, and hopefully you've gotten some new ideas, things you hadn't thought of. For those who haven't tried it yet, what are you waiting for? You've seen the prompts. They're very straightforward to do. You can start tomorrow. Just take something off your to-do list and start typing. Remember, your competitors may already be entering their prompts. So best wishes to you all. Surge ahead and ride that AI wave to business success. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Margaret. This was an incredible presentation with a lot of really good information here. So we've got a few questions for you here. One is, did you use AI to get your use case list?
That's a funny question. The answer is no, I did not. I got my use case list from live people. I am one of the SCORE mentors, and I polled all of the other SCORE mentors that I know, asking them for examples. and I incorporated them into the lists.
So you use real people, not an AI for that. Good idea.
Well, I wanted to make sure they were for real, and I wanted to make sure you could really do them with all these different packages. And so I thought it had a lot more credibility. If I'm going to give people advice, I would like it to be as accurate as possible.
So let's see. Oh, here's one question that we've got here is, does ChatGPT make videos?
Ah, ChatGPT can make videos. They've announced something called Sora, Sora, which was introduced recently. You cannot get it with a free version. You will have to pay for it. And in addition to the one that ChatGPT offers, there are many other packages that are progressing in making videos. It's been a very difficult ride. They start out as very short. They can only do the very short ones, but the video capabilities are getting better and better for a longer length. Also, they're adding the capability to have all sorts of soundtracks with them. So there's a lot of activity in the whole video field. I'm sure it's coming to do that. I know that editing videos is ahead of creating them from scratch. So there's a lot you can do with editing. If you're really into video, I would suggest you look at one of those websites that lists all the different programs that are available and click on the filter that says video, and you'll get a lot of information.
Interesting. Yeah, that it's amazing what it can produce here. So here's an interesting question. Using image created via AI, any chance of issues with copyright?
Oh, yes, for sure there are issues. Now, the AI companies have gone to great lengths so that you as a user are not affected. They have done a lot of work legally with the sources of the material that they have in their packages so that you're not likely to inadvertently get one. It's still the law at the moment that if something's generated 100% by AI, you cannot copyright it, but that may change. It's certainly up for consideration. There are even some AI companies who have gone as far as saying that if you are taken to court by someone over copyright, that they will pay your legal fees. Now, I don't think you're likely to encounter that, but it has been in the news.
Yeah, and I do remember that the Copyright Office is actually looking into this now because of the proliferation of these images and the questions here. So yeah, it's something that definitely stay tuned for.
Yes.
Um, so here's a basic question. How do we start? How do we use it? Do we download it? Where is it?
Okay. Yes, you do download it. You go to the company website. If it's OpenAI is the company that has ChatGPT, and you do download it. Uh, Microsoft has Copilot, Google has Gemini, and there are others. You go to their websites and you can download it. Most of them have a free version, but I would encourage you to not use the free version. You say, oh, but it costs money. It costs like $20 a month, something along that line. Your time is worth more than $20 an hour. And so you're going to pay for that AI so quickly if you are actually using it that by all means, pay the money and get all the extra features and convenience. It's much faster, it gives better answers. So please spend the $20 for it. But you do download it, and then it'll just say, what can I help you with? Or it'll say, type in your prompt. You just start typing.
And yeah, it is very simple. And I think you can also, you mentioned that you can put them on the phone. So you can also do the same thing with your phone to search for those apps on whatever Play Store or wherever you
Yes.
the App
Yes.
Store or wherever whatever phone you have.
Now there is a warning there. Chat GPT, for example, there are a lot of lookalikes on the App Store. So do make sure you get the right one. I noticed that when I was downloading it. A lot of people, as I say, are trying to jump on that bandwagon. Make sure you get the one that you download from OpenAI from an App Store.
And you can check that sometimes with the logo. That they have a specific logo for OpenAI, I
Oh,
believe.
no, these guys have logos that are really close. You want
Oh,
to see where it
there
says
you go.
OpenAI. They thought
Probably,
already.
probably generated by an AI.
It
Um,
could be.
so the let's see, what is the Chat GPT package that includes creating images?
Oh, that one is GPT-4 is the current version that's out
Mhm.
there. Any of the packages, all of these companies have a graduated range of prices. And the more expensive ones are primarily for large corporations. Um, but anything that's there, I'm sure there are some free image generators, but most of them do cost money, and they're better if you pay something. So it's the $20 a month GPT does include images. Copilot has images included in it. It's called Designer. Um, at the just literally today, Google does not have an image generator because there's had a problem, but it'll be reappearing very soon. So they're out there, and it'll
And
say if you're signing up.
so we had another question about, is DALL-E 3 integrated into the free version of Chat GPT? And I think the answer is no for that.
I don't believe so. No,
Yeah.
as I
Okay.
say, pay the $20. It's well worth every penny.
Yeah. So is there one site that is better, AI that is better with images?
Some of the well-known image specialists, shall I say, Mid-Journey is well known. Um, uh, right now, my mind goes blank on to what one of the other one is. Anyway, there are certainly some. Mid-Journey gets a lot of press as being a good one if you don't want to incorporate it in with something else. Microsoft's Copilot actually uses Dolly as well. Um, that's what theirs is based on. They give it a different name and it's slightly different, but it's actually Dolly underneath, as is true with a lot of other packages. That's why I had them in a column or in a row called Foundation, because they are incorporated with other things.
Okay. So here's a question, or kind of a statement question. I could see a college student feeding their college transcript into AI and feed multiple job postings and generating multiple resumes targeted to each job posting. Any comment?
Um, I don't know that that's necessarily wrong as long as they put in honest information. Uh, Whether or not you consider some of that information too confidential to put into your system would be one question. But if you mean, are you going to mass produce job postings? They're probably going to mass produce job postings anyway, whether they do them one by one manually or if they do them with AI assistance. I don't know that it's going to really change their strategy, shall we say. But it should be,
Yeah.
they should just make up stuff.
Well, and as you said, you be careful putting personal information in there because even though they say that that's not being saved, it's out there, so there's always a possibility. Um, let's see. Seen ads for writing a book using AI. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness, many people are using AI to write books, especially children's books. That's very popular. You can even ask it to write coloring books. It does a beautiful job on coloring books, it turns out. But also, children's books are very common because it will accept, children will accept a less photographic images, and it's really good at generating, cartoon kind of things. An entire novel, I'm sure you can do it. I don't know if I've seen any that are that long, but I've certainly seen short stories and lots of podcasts.
So here's how do I get started? Is there a subscription fee? I think you've kind of already answered that, is that you can use the free version, but as you said, it's $20 a month, and your time is worth much more than that. So there is a subscription for the full service.
Yes. So once you signed up, it'll say there'll be a little blinking light, and it'll say, what can I help you with? And you start typing.
So I'm not sure I understand this. Will most tech jobs go down like programmers? In other words, I guess what they're asking is, Do you think that AI will reduce the need for programmers?
Yes. The CEO of NVIDIA, if you happen to be familiar with NVIDIA, who makes the majority of the chips for AI computers, just in the last week, perhaps, he predicted that the number of programming jobs will dramatically drop. Right this minute, there's huge competition among a lot of the cloud servers. So Amazon, Microsoft, and others, they are trying to lure existing programmers to start using their brand of computer code writers. So they're hoping that the computer code writers that do survive will all be using their versions. There's a huge sub industry going after that marketplace. But certainly there are predictions that they won't need nearly as many programmers in the future.
So a question here is, how do you spell Dolly? Is that
It's DALLE, no, DALL hyphen E, and then a number. And right now we happen to be on version 3. It's a play on words for Salvador Dali, the artist.
okay? What platforms would be used to create children's books?
You could probably use any of them to do an image and ask for that style. I have to confess I haven't tried it. And it's not just for children. If I can digress just a minute, I saw a really interesting webinar that I was watching, and it was a medical doctor who was talking about the instructions for that you take home. And he was a pediatrician and did surgery on children. And he had all the take home instructions for the parents done as a coloring book so the children would not be afraid of having their treatment, which I thought was a really creative use of coloring books. But since I don't really know which one does coloring books the best, I suggest you Google it and find out.
Yeah. So here's a question that probably the last one here as we're hitting our time limit. What AI platform would work to upload an image style to create images for a series of images or a book?
All right. Certainly, you can upload images into ChatGPT, just as one example, but they now have banned you putting in like a famous artist and saying, oh, I want this in the example in the style of Picasso, or I want this in the style of so-and-so. The AI packages won't do that anymore. That's one of the things that was very popular right at the beginning, and they felt that that did violate copyright things. They're having the same kind of conversation now about voices. There's been all sorts of concern. 11 Labs, I think is the name of the company. It was in the news recently because someone was using their package to imitate famous people with their voices illegally. So I think the same thing has happened with copying a known artist's style. Now, if it says, this is my style, and I want you to make more in my style, that is still legal and we'd be perfectly okay. And you can upload images, certainly into ChatGPT, and I believe into Copilot. I'm not sure. I don't think you can in Google's package.
And no one has asked, but you can also upload data. If you
Yes.
want ChatGPT to do some data analytics for you, it's actually pretty good at that as well.
Yes, that's a whole, again, a sub-industry. They're going after large corporations who have massive amounts of data, whether it be financial or marketing or whatever. And there are packages specific to that, as well as you say, the capabilities under ChatGPT has been very well received.
So if you go to the next slide here, Margaret, we'll wrap it up for this evening here. So please visit our website at www.score.org/North Chicago for a list of webinars. We've got regional webinars now, so there's a lot more offerings out there for you. But these are some examples. One of the interesting ones here is the Amazon, how to sell more on Amazon, and that is being done by Amazon. So that is a that is going to be a very popular one. And then the next slide is, if you want to get started with SCORE, if you enjoyed Margaret's presentation, please go to our website and click on Find a Mentor. If you have your phone handy, you can use the QR code here, and that will take you to the mentor request form. And as a reminder, this will be sent to our YouTube channel. And also, we're going to be sending out the quick guide, I think, that Margaret has developed for anyone who has registered for the event here, which is kind of a summary of the session. We will not send out the slides themselves, but we do have a quick guide that would be very helpful. So, Margaret, thank you. As always, it's great to have you do our presentations here. Very informative. We've gotten a lot of good comments from people that have enjoyed the session, and I also think it's one of the best AI sessions I've heard, because it's very practical, not very theoretical, which is the whole point.
Well, I want everybody to embrace it and start generating benefit. It'll help. It's really amazing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. And if you have any other questions, please get in touch with either Margaret or myself. You can find us on the SCORE website there. So have a good evening, and we will see you at the next session here.
Thank you. Bye.